So hello and welcome to the podcast where we are looking at various subjects and all to do with Reiki, our spiritual awakening, and really sometimes when we're on the path, how do we access these answers? Because this space is really about helping each other out. It's really about connecting with that powerful part of ourselves that until we get on our spiritual path kind of gets overlooked. We just don't tune in all the time to that intuition. But do you know what? When we get into a frequency of meditation, that's when we can really sort of expand in our awareness, connect in with that powerful part of ourselves, and we can hear and see, feel and know what this part is communicating with us. So this space is really about, like I said, helping each other out. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at a question that others have raised, which is, does Reiki work all the time? And I think to answer that, we need to look at what Reiki is. Are there situations sometimes where it doesn't work? And how do we really tap into that part of ourselves and really see for ourselves how this really works? So don't go anywhere, stick around so that we can do this together. So when we are asking that question, does Reiki work? I think it's really helpful if we understand, well, what is Reiki? Now, the Japanese word, I think, gives us a heads up, because when we look at just how when Reiki got started and how Yusui, he was like the first pioneer of sort of reintroducing this lost knowledge of how we can connect with the light, how we can understand our path and purpose, because this was really what was going on for him. But when we look at what it is, it later was translated Reiki. So Reiki is sort of got a two-part meaning, which is like power of God, wisdom of God, and then you've got the ki, which is the universal life force energy. So when we look at Reiki, we're really talking about energy. We're talking about this source energy. It's God's source, God's spark, it's that vital force energy. And then we start understanding how we kind of know this by different labels. And that was a realization for me, because when I first felt this Reiki energy, it really reminded me of the Holy Spirit, the chi, the prana, and the Shakti. And then we start understanding that this is energy. It's just that according to our beliefs sometimes, where we are and how we sort of come into this, we might know it as a different term. But in getting back to our question, does Reiki work all the time? Well, since we now understand that we're talking about energy, if we were to phrase that question, does energy work all the time? Then I think we begin to look at it a little bit more differently, because we appreciate and know that Reiki, that the energy, that source is there. It is there all the time. And I think then we need to look at, well, where is this energy? Where does it come from? And that's really where we begin to sort of look at the first part of that question, where it's more God source, it's that higher power. And then, of course, once we understand that this is coming from that part, this is where it gets really interesting. Because with the method that Yusui has left behind, he left behind where if we use our mind, the power of our mind, the thought, and he knew about that universal law that all is mind, that when we use that and we connect in with that light, so what that means is that we connect into the light that's within us, and then we connect that into the light force energy, then something happens. And this is really incredible, because this is where I see people, they say to me, you know what, I've done the meditation, something is missing, I can't quite get it, so I'm now here with Reiki because I'm drawn. So they get that sort of sense that they need to do something, it's going to be this. And you know what? For so many, that is like the missing piece of the puzzle. And I feel that we all get into a meditative state. Some go in very quickly. And for them, using that technique of relaxation or breathing really works for them. For others, it doesn't work. The mind monkeys are just going. But when we use our mind and our thought and we connect this really powerful method, which is left behind in our consciousness, then that puts us into a frequency. And this is another part, or another piece of the jigsaw that will help us to understand does Reiki work all the time, because what I've realized is what comes next. So what comes next is really how we perceive that frequency. You know, how do we sort of feel that Reiki? And I've seen this time and time again. Sometimes we take someone else's, how they perceive meditation, and we think, oh, we're going to feel that. I mean, I did it myself. I don't know why, but I thought that when I would meditate, I would see things, or I would see the light. I'd be more visual. But actually what happened with me was completely the opposite. And I overlooked that meditative state and sort of came to a conclusion, does Reiki really work? Because I just missed something really important. And that is how we're wired. So how we're wired is really how we intuit. And this is something that I spend time in the in-person courses when we do that together. Because one person might be very visual and I can spot them because they normally are looking at me and they're seeing like lights around me, they're seeing colours, and they have like a way of clicking out, and so I'm really normally very aware of that. Then you've got those that feel. They're the feelers. And you know what, going back to my experience when I first started to get into the meditation, understand the frequency and does Reiki really work and all this and really what it is that I totally overlooked of what something that I did and I wasn't even conscious of. And that is I feel vibration. I feel energy, I can feel the vibe of the room, the vibe of a person, the energy of thought. And this is something, incidentally, in my 20s and 30s, I struggled with. So yeah, that's when we can look a little bit sort of not in control. We don't kind of know what it is. We don't ever really look at what's causing that. We just know that we're sort of overwhelmed when we go out in a crowd and we go out somewhere and the vibe is off. So this is just something that sometimes we don't connect the dots. We don't sort of kind of realize that this is a part of us. This is a thing. And it took me a little while for me to realize actually this is a gift. But how it was showing up, it didn't look like a gift at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. And if that is something that you're quite interested in, I'll put a link below, because I did do a podcast about this where I talked about really clairsentience and just how it shows up, and how once we understand that about ourselves, that we can start switching things up and then start using it and sort of put some techniques in place so that we don't get flooded all the time when we can pick up so much. Now, for some of you, you might be very cognizant. Nobody tells you, you just know. It's like ping, you know. You don't know how you know, but you know. And sometimes that can lead to really profound wisdom, and it's very noticeable when it comes from young ones, or it comes out and you're aware that you've either said something because you just had that little bit of download. It's this claircognizance. This is really another powerful way that we can intuit really source energy, that energy source, or Reiki. Others can hear it, you know, hear the mind's eye. It opens within us, if you like, that channel where we become sharpened. We either hear the inner voice, hear what's if our guides, or just even I've heard people say they can hear the energy. It's like a crackle, or there's like a sound. I mean, this is incredible. But out of context, when we don't realise that it's something that's within us and it has a spiritual meaning, we don't understand it. We don't sometimes even recognise what it is. And of course, we've got the taste, the smell. This is where some people pick up when a loved one rather has just come into our space, or we get that memory, we smell, we taste, and it's really interesting. There are times where I've been doing a Reiki session where I've just been holding that space, and I have just either felt a vibration, or I can smell, or there's a taste. And I'm just aware that this is a loved one that's just come in, and that the person is able just to sort of connect in with them, as well as the source, the Reiki energy. And I always find this really fascinating that when I ask a person, you know, how was that for you after the session, and how they can get quite emotional and say that this person was present, and that's the person that they'd lost, whether a grandparent, sibling, other half, whatever the context is. So it's really powerful energy. And once we become aware of this source energy, this Reiki energy, that it's not something that's outside of ourselves, it's actually something that's already within. And I think this is really incredible, because there is a shift now in our awareness and consciousness that it's not outside of ourselves, it's actually within. And, you know, years ago that would be so off, almost blasphemous for us to even think along that lines. But I think now we're beginning to understand that God's source, that energy, is actually within you. It's within me, it's within all of us. And it's really us waking up to how that is for us. So the next part of what we're going to look at, are there situations where it doesn't work? And I find this quite interesting. One of them I just related to, when we kind of are not aware that once we're in this frequency, how we intuit. And I got that wrong. I really thought I'd be seeing everything. Actually, I felt. And the minute I realised that, I was able to tune in. Now, another situation that I've noticed is when I do the Reiki courses, I always have a follow-up whilst they're doing their 21-day meditation. So I always do like a video call, and we just catch up, see how they are, any questions. And I always want to find out, well, how's it going? And most nearly everyone, they question, does really Reiki work all the time? And I always find that keeps popping up. It's sort of a thing where we think that it works some of the time, but not all of the time. And I think what's so unique, if you have done a Reiki course, whether that's in person or online, there's going to be a period of adjustment. And then once we get past the period of adjustment, we do what I personally refer to, we do our rhythm and flow. In other words, we go on and do life. But I'll come back to that. But we'll talk about really what's going on after we've done such a quite a powerful shift in with the Reiki, and especially when we've learnt the methods and the techniques, and when we start to really remember who we are and we start tuning in. And that's purely because there's a lot of fluctuation going on after we've had a Reiki course. Once we start tuning in and meditating, it really is no longer a hit and miss. We're in. And then when that happens, it starts sort of chucking things out, starts moving things out. And sometimes we can perceive that nothing's happening, it's not working. And that's more to do with us, because when we are connecting in with the light, we sort of go through phases. Sometimes we feel really good, and there are times we feel emotional. I've heard people say after they've done something like something spiritual or a course like Reiki, is that they feel low or high one minute, and they're not really sure what's causing that fluctuation. Or they might feel that they've got a cold. You just feel a little bit under the weather. So we question, I don't think it's working. But I think this is really interesting that this source energy is actually working, but it's not in the way that we sort of think or perceive it's going to happen. And that goes on as well when we sort of go through our spiritual awakening. And I know we expect it to be wonderful, bliss, la la, all the time. And then when we get these opposites, or we get more dense, or things get chucked up, we kind of don't relate to that, or we sort of think, oh, that's not really part of it, or maybe something's not working. But it's quite interesting, because that is the time when source energy and Reiki is working. It's just that for us, it's not really presenting in a way that maybe we sort of think it will be. It's almost like we want the ups all the time. And I think this is quite an interesting one when it comes to meditation, is that half the time we are not aware or cognizant of the fact that we are in the frequency of meditation. For example, we do this really very well without us even being aware of. When we go to sleep and when we wake up, we go through these levels, and you've probably heard me talk about them on the other podcasts, where we go through beta, which is our everyday, when we're just working, it's busy, we're just doing what we're doing. And then we go into, when we're more settled, we can go into alpha. That's a daydream. That's when we go for a walk. You might have your dog, you're in nature, or you sit and have a coffee and you look at the trees. When I go in my garden, I'm now aware what that frequency looks like, because there's a little shift, you know, and that's something I work on with people when we do the course, so that we tune in and say, right, okay, we're in that frequency. So to recognize it, when we go to sleep at night, we go into alpha, we get relaxed, then we go into theta. Theta is where we can just, not quite asleep, but we're just aware of what's going on in the room around us. Unless something wakes us up, we slip into delta. Now, delta is when we're unconscious, we're asleep. The body needs the rest, it needs a sleep, but that higher self, that light, that divine spark of energy that's within us is out the body. And hence that's why we have our astral travel and our dream. And, you know, once we realize and we understand that we're doing this anyway, and we're not even aware of it, then we can really sort of see how meditation, or this frequency of connecting in with Reiki, and how it really is working. It's just that sometimes we're kind of missing what it looks like, or we're expecting to have an outer body experience every time we have a meditation. Well, actual fact, that's not always how it works. Sometimes there are incredible times during our meditation, and sometimes there are others when we're more dense, or we're feeling, or we're worried, or we're just working something out, and we don't quite get the experience that we want. But that doesn't mean to say that Reiki isn't working, because quite often it's in those kind of situations where we pull through something, get through something, that actually that is the time when this energy source is really doing its job. And that's how we can evolve, grow, and just continue and to navigate some of the challenges or the issues, whatever we've got going on in our lives. So this brings us back to our concluding bit when we look at that question, does Reiki work all the time? That it's working and always at play, but perhaps sometimes we're not aware of it. And sometimes when we're going through shifts or we're going through something and we're working through it, that's really the most incredible way that I've come to realize that's when it really is working, because we're able to change, evolve, grow, and able to continue to do something that we're here to do. Maybe we're finding it a difficult part of our path, or maybe sometimes, which a lot of is happening with people, we know we're here to do something and we're just trying to fine tune it and as to what that is. And it's sort of drip fed, because we've got to evolve from point A to B is a different vibration. So we've got to do what we need to do in order to get to that next part of our path. So does Reiki work all the time? Yes, it does. It does work. But does it work in perhaps the ways that we expect or want it to? Then perhaps that's something that is going on with us. But if we look at really what this Reiki is, it is divine source. It's energy. It's from the Most High. So when it comes to that and the fact that we are connected in with that light, then it's really more of the case of us being aware and acknowledging that. And I just think as well, when we've got the Yusui method, because it really is a way of really getting into a meditative state. And that's the reason why it's been left behind. Because once we use that method, we are in, I always call it's like a shift. But like I said, what comes next is what's most powerful, because how we perceive that energy and that frequency, wow. And that is something that is where the spiritual growth and the learning and understanding that it's not out there, it's in here. And that can lead to most incredible, powerful spiritual understanding, awareness, and remembering who we really are, which is spiritual beings in a physical body. And we're all here together having this human experience. So I hope that's helped you. I hope that's sort of clarified, or maybe you're going through a phase, or you've done a Reiki course, or you're in your spiritual awareness and everything feels a little bit, because sometimes we get like that. But when we look at the bigger picture, the fact that we are going through sometimes difficult situations and overcoming them and growing, and it's in that growth that sometimes we don't even give it the recognition that anything's going on or working. Actually, that is where it's really at its best. And the fact is that that light is always within us, and we have not only the source energy that within us, our own internal essence of who we really are, but we've got our spirit guides, our angels, and divine source absolutely loves us. And that can keep us going when we're going through any kind of situation or challenge when we don't feel so good. So I hope you've got something from this and helps us to understand how really energy works. And if you like this, then please hit the subscribe button. I've done a visual one, so you might notice that the other ones are audio. I'm sort of just having a go and doing some visual podcasts, and let me know if you like it. Please reach out, and I really appreciate when people share what's going on in their spiritual journey, share what's going on for them with their spiritual awakening, because we're all in this together. There's not a race. It really is helping each other out, and that's really what this space is about. So hit the subscribe button, please do, and make a comment below if you want to reach out, or you want to go to the website at learnreikiandconnect.co.uk, and there you'll find the different ways that I sort of help people to connect in with that really powerful, most special part of us. And it's not until we actually get on our spiritual journey when we begin to realize, wow, it really all is in us. But then we also come up with the hurdles of life and getting through that. So I talk a lot about what is behind a lot of this challenges and hardship, where we look at really the spiritual meaning of when our health plummets, spiritual meaning, what's behind our mental health when we start to shift into an area which where we really go downhill and there's decline, and try to understand. But I've always found that whatever goes on in the physical, there is normally a spiritual meaning behind it. And this is what's so key, is that part of us, our higher self, the God source, that spark within us, is trying to help us out. It's trying to get our attention. And if that's something you're interested in, I've done a video on that where I'm talking about really the higher self, messages with the body. My goodness, it happens to me. It has happened, and it's happening with others, and it's just tying all this up together. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next time we're meeting up, where we'll put together some other areas of what different clients are talking to me about, and where we can really sort of understand what's going on in our very physical lives, and how our spiritual aspect of ourselves can navigate us through all of that. So look forward to seeing you next time. So bye for now.